Hello to all our friends out there from the Financial Advisory Group. Happy fall and a happy Thanksgiving to all of you. And we hope you get to spend some of this next week or two with family and friends. I know I'm personally pretty darn excited. Liam flies in from college tonight, so really looking forward to get to see him and getting to spend some time with him after his time out in Oklahoma. Um, as we were putting together our video and thinking through some thoughts for November, a theme kept coming back to us. We've talked about this year. We've used the term that we think a lot of us are missing out on good and great because we're chasing perfect. And it's occurred to us that we really think this economy is in better shape than most people think it is. We get that none of us like inflation, right? That's probably the thing that's hanging us all up. But if you look underneath the hood, there's a lot of positives happening in this economy. And really, there's one, you can either look at the positives or you can look at the negatives. Our view, as you typically know, is let's try to find those bright spots. We heard a story recently, too, that sort of reflects our thought process. It's an Indian tale, and you might have heard it before. But it goes like this. There's a grandfather out on a walk with his grandson, and he's sharing some of his wisdom for life. And the grandfather says to his grandson, you know, son, there's a fight going on inside of me, a terrible fight between two wolves. One is bad. He has anger, fear, hate, jealousy, envy, and pessimism. One is good, though. He is hope, kindness, joy, love, and optimism. The grandfather stops there. And the boy, of course, looks up to the grandfather and says, well, grandfather, which wolf will win? And the grandfather's reply, it depends which wolf you feed. So I think our thought for today when we look at the economy is which wolf do we want to feed? Sure, there's problems, right? There's always going to be problems. But in our view, there's a lot more positives that we're going to try to feed that wolf today and give you some of our positive thoughts on what we see happening in the economy and the markets today. So as we go through, keep that theme in mind. When we look forward to sort of where we were a year ago, and we think about this good wolf versus bad wolf. A year ago, these were the headlines. There was a forecast for recession within a year that 100% of economists agreed to. Well, we're a year later and pretty sure we're not in a recession. We'll get into why we think that's the case now, but it's never that we ever hear people forecasting optimism. So it's important to keep in mind that, yes, these type of news stories get headlines, but a year ago, the prognosticators were saying we'd be in recession. Well, here's where we are today. When we look forward to today, the US job market looks steady. You've heard us say this many times throughout the year, that the unemployment rate, which is shown here in the upper right-hand chart, is hanging around near an all-time low at about 3.9%. Is that number exactly accurate? No, but I'd argue it's never been accurate. What it tells you is that almost anyone who wants a job today can get a job. And if you look down below, the average hourly earnings of workers today are growing at about 4 to 5%. That's well above the average we've had of the last 10 to 20 years. So wages are actually growing as well at a faster pace than they have. So people are working, they're making more than they ever had before, and they're not too worried about losing their job. So what does that lead to? That leads to consumer spending continues to climb. It continues to surprise us. But one thing we know us Americans are good at is we're good at spending money. And if our jobs are steady and we're making a fair amount of money, we're going to continue to spend money. So to us, these are some positive things we see inside the economy. But then we hear the catch. But wait, what about credit card debt? Isn't all of this coming from credit cards? Well, let's take a closer look. What about credit cards? I don't know if you've all heard the news, but of course it caught some attention that for the first time ever, if you look at the chart on the left, revolving credit or credit card debts climbed over $1 trillion. 1 trillion, that's with a T. That is a very big number in the last month or two. That by itself is a very scary thought. However, if we look at the right-hand side of the screen here and we zoom out a little bit further, this is the same chart that's on the left, but just goes back 10 years instead of 2 years. What you see here is that credit card debt is on the same trajectory it's been on for the last 10, 20 years. The only thing that changed it was COVID, right? COVID broke every chart that we look at. COVID came around and credit card debt actually fell off a cliff. Not because we didn't want to spend money, we couldn't spend money. So you saw consumer or credit card debt fall, But now, is it high? Sure, it's high. Again, it's up near that 1 trillion number. But if you look at the long-term trend, we're right back on trend to where we would have been as though COVID never happened. So it depends which way you look at it. Another way to look at this is that if you look at the percentage of credit card debt that's out there compared to the amount of cash we have in bank accounts today. So how much credit card debt is out there versus how much are people holding in bank accounts? It's near the all-time low. If we look back just 20 years ago, there was 12%. This ratio was 12%. So credit card debt made up 12% of all cash deposits. Today, that number is in half, down to 6%. That's excellent. So, right, is credit card debt worrisome? Sure. But at the same time, there's more cash today, and net worth of the average individual today is higher than it's ever been before. So we'd prefer to look at this as a normal long-time trend continuing. To find some more bright spots, don't look now, although I'm sure most of you have. Gas prices have now gone 8 weeks in a row with declines. That's excellent news. Talk about something that makes us feel more comfortable as consumers is as we see gas prices fall, it's like an instant trigger that it makes us feel better. That's a good sign. On top of that, you finally have interest rates falling. This is something that's been a big concern for us here in the office, is that until interest rates start leveling off or falling, the market was going to have a tough time moving forward. And if we pause here for a little bit, to us, this is a lot like, why were interest rates taking so long to fall? The Federal Reserve was raising rates so aggressively the last 15 to 18 months. Their version of raising rates is like hitting the brakes on a car. They were hitting the brakes on the car, but for some reason, there was no signs of this economy slowing down. Right? We kept spending. We kept doing the things that kept the economy growing, which worried them. The Fed was trying to slow it down, and we kept going. Think about that. If you're driving a car and you start hitting the brakes, but the car doesn't slow down, that makes you nervous. So the market was nervous the last couple of months. You're starting to see signs of those brakes working, though. You're starting to see gas prices fall off. You're starting to see interest rates cool off. You're also starting to see inflation cool off. So the Fed, just in the last couple of weeks, is starting to see some of the signs they wanted that shows that instead of hitting the brakes and the car speeding up, things are starting to slow down a little bit, which may allow them to back off. Hence, you've seen the market calm down a little bit the last couple of weeks. So inflation's cooling off along with gas prices coming down. All good stuff. We'll end here with something you may have heard about people talking about. People talk about the Magnificent Seven, and what is it? This is a really interesting chart that looks at the market so far this year. If you look at the market this year and you look at just the 7 companies that we call the Magnificent Seven, you see the list of them over here on the left. Just those companies alone this year through September were up about 55%. What are these other lines? The orange line is if you look at the S&P 500. So instead of just the 7, let's total all 500 companies, is up about 12%. If you remove the 7 companies from the S&P 500 and say, just take those 7 names out, how have the other 493 companies done this year? They're actually flat. They haven't gone up at all. So talk about a market that's being driven by 7 companies. That's it. So that's been an interesting part to this market, that if you don't own these companies, you've sort of been left out to dry. So just an interesting tidbit with this market today. So to us, we just wanted to pass on our thoughts again and we think things look okay. In fact, it's comforting to us to see rates calm down. It's comforting for us to see inflation show signs of calming down. Gas prices show signs of coming down. Again, things that we can feed this positive wolf, right? We think there's enough stuff out there that we can find positive that makes us feel good. To go back to what we said earlier this year, we don't see the sky falling. There's issues. There always will be issues. But in our view, there's enough positive things out there that give us confidence this economy is in pretty good standing for the next 3, 6, 9 months at least. We'll end today with just a happy Thanksgiving to you and all your families. Our biggest thank you we can give you is thank you for the trust and confidence you continue to place in us. We look forward to another great year together with you. Again, enjoy that time with family and friends. Focus on them and let us focus on this stuff for you. Happy Thanksgiving from all your friends at the Financial Advisory Group. Bye-bye.